Okay, my YouTube people, next on the 46 knuckle is to get the primary and clutch system back together. It's been a while since I worked on it, so let me get to it. You can see my primary inner tin has some cracked out parts in it. One of the first things you want to do anytime you're putting a primary back together is you want to put the chain on first. Because the primary covers the sprocket, you got to put the chain on first, or you'll have to open the master link and feed it in. Now that I fed the chain in, I'm going to check out what I need to do to put this inner cover back on. I have to take this bolt that's in the chain guard, and it also goes through the oil tank and through the inner primary tin right here, and then the lower tin has this bolt right here that holds it on. I'll undo these bolts and then line everything up. You can see they wore this bolt pretty good. I'm not sure if you can see that on camera or not, but it's got grooves cut in it, so I'm going to replace that bolt. I'm also going to keep the spring, the washer, and the nut. The lower one's in pretty good shape. I'm not going to have to worry about that. I am going to have to clean everything. Now you can see I have all that hardware cleaned. It'll be ready to use. Now I'm going to take this upper bolt. I'm going to put a washer on it. I'm going to slip it through the chain guard first, and then through the oil tank, and then through the primary. Next thing it gets is this spring, a washer, some Loctite, the nut, and now it takes a cotter pin. You can see that cotter pin's way too long. Last thing I do after this is I back the nut off to where it just touches the cotter pin. So I don't catch a finger on that, and I just turn it like that. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the one down here. Now the bolt's through the spring, some blue Loctite, the washer, and the nut. Now that I have the rear inner primary bolts on, I'm going to put the bolts in for the front of the inner primary. First, you put this ring in, and this is why it's not as important that these are perfect. It's because this big thick ring will hold it. And then the bolt locking ring, and you bend these tabs over to hold the bolts in. I'm going to put some blue Loctite on these bolts. Alright, now I'm going to bend the locking tabs over. Alright, now that the inner primary is all on, I'm going to work on putting the clutch basket on. First thing I'm going to do is put the key in the keyway. The other thing that's really important with this is you have to make sure that the taper is really clean on both the shaft and the clutch hub. If you get any kind of dirt in there, this clutch hub will not turn true, nor will the taper hold it tight. The other thing you need to do is make sure that these threads are really clean, because when you put the nut on that hold this hub, you're going to put some red Loctite on that, and you want to make sure that they're clean in order for the red Loctite to work. You can also see that the transmission's still loose. I didn't tighten it down because I knew it would have to move forward. So the next thing I'm going to install is the inner clutch hub. There's a keyway in the transmission shaft, and it's a taper fit here, and then there's a keyway in the hub. With these hubs, you just want to make sure that this friction material that's right here is tight and not loose. They're just riveted on with these rivets here, and those rivets can come loose. This one's pretty tight, so that's good. Don't forget this nut's left-handed. Alright, now that I got it clean, get the hub on. That was easy enough. Now there's a lock, I believe, that goes on this. And this is the lock. There's a notch here on that lock that goes up into the keyway, and then you just put the lock on. Now lock's on. Now I'm going to put a dab of red Loctite on the threads. I just got done cleaning the threads out for the nut, and this is left-handed. Now you can see how clean the threads were because I was able to put that nut on the entire way by hand. Now I'm going to tighten it up. Now this isn't something I would normally recommend, to hit it with an impact gun, but I am. Now it's on. You just want to make sure it's turning true. You can kind of put a finger behind here and feel if it's wobbling, and it's not. It's true and it's free both ways. Now that you have it on all the way, you want to bend the locking tab over to make sure that it doesn't come loose. For this, I just take a screwdriver down in here and give it a bend up like that. Next thing I'm going to do is move the transmission all the way forward so that I don't have a hard time getting the chain on. To move it forward, you have to loosen the 4 nuts and the 1 bolt on the bottom, and then you turn this bolt counterclockwise to move the transmission forward, and I'll show you what that looks like. Come up under here and you just turn it out. Now I'm going to push it a little forward. Now just take my 9/16 and turn it out by hand. Now you can see how much I moved it, probably an inch, and as soon as it starts to get snug, you want to stop. If not, you can break the aluminum case right where it's threaded in. And now you can see how much forward it moved over this side. Next thing you have to install is the bearing cage, the plate, and the springs, and of course the bearings. Now you can see where these bearings are staggered every other. What I'm going to do is I'm going to replace all this with the Big Fix. The Big Fix is made by BDL, and for these 4 speeds that I'm doing, the part number is BF-1. It's called the Big Fix clutch, and BF must be Big Fix. Anyway, the part number for the Big Fix from Drag Specialties is DS360172. The other important thing to do when you're installing this is the retainer. And this is a plastic retainer that you use, and it has 3 different positions that you set it on, and I'll show you how that's done. This fits 41 to 84 big twin clutches. The difference that it makes is significant. I highly recommend these. So following along with the instructions, it tells you to remove the stock cage and bearings. With the grease that they supply, you coat the bearing surface of the inner hub and the outer hub with the grease. Then you place the basket over the hub, place 3 bearings at the 6 o'clock position, place 1 bearing each at 3, 9, and 12 o'clock position. This will center the clutch basket. Then you insert the balance of the bearings from 6 o'clock going counterclockwise and clockwise up until you get 12 o'clock. This is the grease they supply. Doesn't look like much. You just tear it open, squeeze some out onto the inner hub, paste it around. Now you put some on the outer clutch hub and spread it around. Now that I have the grease on the inner and outer hub, they tell you to put 3 bearings at the 6 o'clock position, and then you set the hub on here, and then you get 1 in at the 12 o'clock position. Now it also tells you to put 1 in at 3 and 9. There they are. Now it has you work the rest of the bearings in, starting at the bottom on both sides and working your way up. Now I have all the bearings in, and it says that you should have a gap, and I do. If you look right here, there's a gap. I can wiggle this screwdriver around, but the gap's not big enough to get another bearing in, and you don't want them so tight. So it winds up that I had 2 left over. So you can see it still spins, everything's spinning together, and then also the hub spins on here, no problem. So now I'm going to put the primary chain on. And you can see as I was putting it on, the hub came off the inner hub a little bit and you just push back on, not a big deal. Next thing you do is you put this retainer on, and what I've always wound up using is B. A is real deep here, so that'll put this on a lot deeper. B, and then C shallow. B's in between. So I'm just going to start with B, and you just want to put it up until it's flush. Okay, so the 3 long studs have a groove on them that the snap ring sits in, and then you just take either A, B, or C and you put it on until you can just barely see the groove. Now in the past, B's always been the one I've used, but in this case, A is going to be the one I use, and you can see that groove back there. And I'll show you what it looks like after I get the snap ring on. Okay, you heard it snap in there. And there's what it looks like. Now I'll do the other 2. Now I have all 3 of the snap rings on. Just want to check they can turn the hub. It's a little bit of drag, it's because the grease is thick. Last piece of the puzzle is to get the front sprocket on, and I have the key on the crank already. Get the sprocket in the chain like that. Now slip it over the end of the crank. This chain's really tight, not giving me much slack because it's so tight. There we go. That's a little closer. Alright, there it is finally. Now, just got to find the key. That's it there. And you saw the sprocket just slip on. And you can see that has a little too much slop in it, so we're going to have to take the trans. First we have to tighten the front sprocket up, and this definitely you want a good amount of red Loctite on. You want to make sure that before you put the red Loctite on, that the threads are good and clean on both the shaft and the nut, and they are. This is a right-handed thread. You could tell that everything's clean because I can put it on by hand, nice and easy. I'm sure there's a torque spec on this. I don't know what it is. And I have no way to hold the engine, so I'm just going to use the impact. And that's going to do it. I don't want to rip the threads off of anything. So you can see that's too much slop. Now I'm going to go over to that transmission adjuster and take some of this out, because right now it would almost hit the bottom of the case. Alright, I just went 4 flats. You can see that's considerably tighter. I still want a little more tight than that. That was 2 more flats. I know on the Evos they say 5/8 to 3/4, so I'm just going to do a quick check here, and that's about 11/16. I'm going to leave it there. Next thing you want to do is install the steels and the frictions. The first thing I'm going to put in is a friction. Then a steel. This steel says out, so that puts these anti-rattle balls in the right spot if you have those. Then a friction, and then a steel, then another friction, then a steel, and the last one you put in is this friction. It has a friction on one side, it has metal on the other, and the metal faces the pressure plate. This is a spring design, and it takes out some of the harshness of the engagement. And then the last thing you have to do is put all the springs in and the spring retainer. Now to do this, you have to take this nut off and put some washers on it, and that'll put your springs to the retainer plate, and it makes it simple. So the way I've always done this is I get the spring retainer, I put a big washer, put a small washer, I keep the stud in the clutch plate, but I back it out about as far as I can. I put the springs on the 3 long studs, like that. I put this up here. Then I put the adjusting nut on. Then I line up the ones with the studs. Just get it where it just holds it. And now I start sneaking the rest of the springs in one at a time. It's not pretty at all, but this is how I've always done it, and it's always worked. Now right now there's nothing holding this on there, but it being on those studs helps it hold the springs. Now you just take and tighten the nut down and compress the springs. You can see the studs coming through. Now you can take it off like this and just have to line this one spring up a little, like that. And that should take care of it. I put it on and tighten it the rest of the way. Once you get it tightened down far enough, then you can put the nuts on. These are those nuts. They have a groove, and this groove sits in this notch right here, and these cutouts go in. And they're 9. The next thing to be done is to adjust the clutch springs. And in the book, right here, it says the distance from the inner edge of the shoulder on the spring collar 6 to the outer surface of the outer disc 8 is 31/32. In any case, do not tighten the nuts to the point where the inner edge of the shoulder on the spring collar 6 is closer than 55/64 to the surface of the outer disc. So I'm going to adjust it essentially to 1 inch. What it says down below is if you get down to that 55/64 point and it's still slipping, then either you have worn clutches or they could be oil soaked, and you should wash them and dry them, and that should stop the slipping. So let's see how that's done. When they're talking about the spring collar, that's this plate here, and they're talking about the inner edge here to the face of the pressure plate. The way I'm going to check that is with this veneer caliper, and it has a depth mic on the end. So I have it set to exactly 1 inch, and now I'm going to check it. And I just go along here like this, and I pretty much have it where it needs to be. You have to check it in 4 spots to make sure it's all evenly tightened down. That's right there, and I'll just put my finger here and I can feel that it's pretty close. Then I'll check it right here like this, and that could be tightened down a little bit more. So I took it 1 turn, and now I'll check it again. That's pretty much even right there. I'm going to go back and check here again. That's good. Now I'm going to check it here. This one could come in some. This one could come in another half a turn. I want to double check my other 2 points, make sure that they didn't change. This one could come in a little bit more now. And still another turn. So right now that one's pretty much at 1 inch. This one needs to come in. That one's even. Here's even. That one's even. And that one's even. So now that they're all even, you would think that's adjusted. Last thing you have to do is engage the clutch and make sure that the pressure plate lifts off even. If it doesn't, then you adjust these nuts accordingly. So let's see what that looks like. So as you can see, that's coming off pretty even. I'm going to leave it there. That's how you adjust the clutch springs for the proper pressure. Last thing you want to do is this clutch adjustment. So you back the jam nut off, you take it all the way down until it lightly stops, and then there's no play at this arm. I just back it off about a 1/4 turn. There's a little play here, and then I'll tighten this jam nut down. Now you want to have a little play, but not too much, because these clutches don't move a lot. You want to make sure that you have full disengagement. What you want to be careful is that you have a little play here, because as everything heats up in here, it expands and it won't let the clutch release all the way. So that's pretty good right there. Now that I have everything adjusted and assembled, I'm going to tighten up the transmission, and I'm going to make sure to use some red Loctite on those nuts and that single bolt down below. I'm not going to show that on camera because it's so straightforward. The last thing you have to do is put the primary cover on, but I'm not going to do that at this point. I want to finish up everything I have to do in here, and then I'll put that cover on last. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. I read them all, and then I'll respond. If I can help you, that'd be great. And take care.